Okay, so it's 9:15 a.m., 20th of March, 21. Yesterday was an interesting day. Um, Rather, it's the opposite of an interesting day, probably. So I woke up at 88 yesterday because day before my dinner was very high in carbs, and I finished it off with cookies and pancakes and so on, which is okay. It's not a I'm not diabetic. This is just an experiment. So so I woke up at 88. Let's just say I woke up at 6 o'clock at 95. Slowly over the next, 2 hours to about 8 o'clock, I dropped to the 70s. I went to 73. I was at 73 at 7:56 when I made my report yesterday, and then I basically had a heavy whipping cream with tea at that time, and the entire rest of the day I was lightly drinking my favorite holy water, which is basically whiskey. Very slow, very, never exceeding 1 and maybe 2 hours, and slowly my blood sugar was dropping. Nothing precipitous. I mean, this thing was always showing a flat curve. Um, so if you look at the graph, since yesterday it's been flat right under that 60 or 70 or whatever that line is, and it drops under that. It drops under that and continues to stay under it, essentially flat. That break in the line is because I changed the time to daylight savings. So, um, anyway, so slowly I got as low as 49 at around 1 o'clock yesterday, and then I had to basically step out to do something. It jumps to the 60s and then slowly drops back down, back into the 50s, and gets as low as the low 50s. And at 4 o'clock I have heavy whipping cream and coffee. No change, does not touch my blood sugar. I think what your body does is that if you eat fat, it would move to burning dietary fat as opposed to body fat, and it will maintain your blood glucose at the level that it thinks is appropriate. Your body, not this. This could very well say low for days together and it wouldn't matter. Okay, your body doesn't go by this. Your body goes by what it wants to do. So I had so slowly I managed to get to somewhere in the mid 50s. Um, then I start prepping for dinner at 7:30, and I'm at 56. Just activity half hour later, 59, and I start eating around 9:30, and I ate maybe a little over a quart of the creamed curly rock. Basically, it has plenty of fat and protein from dairy, butter, cheese, cream cheese, olive oil, heavy whipping cream, and those greens, which have protein and very few carbs, maybe 5 grams of carbs, bound in fiber, and I didn't cook them to smithereens. So they mostly were intact. So you basically had to chew your way through all of it. The entire time I was still at 59. It didn't move. Through the night, 59 and 60 was on either side of 60. This morning, now, activity. Get up, walk around, make tea, do this, do that, brush your teeth. That's what raises this blood sugar a little bit. So somehow I managed to spend the entire day in the 50s with the little excursions out, just based on activity. So this is sort of a you know known thing, but I'm just proving it. Protein doesn't raise blood sugar. Protein raises insulin. However, good high quality protein, not this made up protein isolate types, um, with its natural fat and everything, like dairy. something like that, dairy, meat, fatty meat, they don't raise insulin to the point where you start feeling it and you start feeling sleepy. Maybe if you ate a lot of it, it would. But and Carbs, even it's not very many carbs, but bound in fiber doesn't raise uh, insulin or blood sugar. Well known. Anyway, today I'm going to be mostly out doing light work, maybe sometimes a little bit heavier work, because I'm going to go buy some lumber and take it to someone to make something. So, out all day, probably not eat till I get back home this evening. So, I'll make observations and post tomorrow.